Right, we're officially live now, so a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. We're still waiting for one or two folk to pop in. I see we've had apologies from Sarah Lambert. She sent an email through yesterday evening that she's unable to join us today. So I just want to note that apology. And yes, those are the only apologies we have so far. So, good morning. So, what I've been doing with the last couple of meetings, David, could you perhaps mute your mic? We're getting a bit of a feedback loop here. David Porter, there we go, thanks. The last couple of meetings is actually just walking people through how to get to the agendas of these meetings. I mean, I realize that you as conveners of the working groups are very familiar with, how to find this information, but for people that are viewing the recording of the broadcast later, it's valuable information. And so from the Wiki Educator homepage, we have the link here at the top of the browser to our planning portal in the wiki. And if we click the planning page, we come to the main page of Wiki Educator. And then again, hi Mark, welcome. So I'm just, for the benefit of the viewers, walking folk through how to find the agenda pages, started from the Wiki Educator homepage, and we're now on the planning portal. And the two links here, which are very important or very useful in navigating your way around our planning documents. The one is, of course, this quick links page, which provides a high-level structure and overview of all the components, and here we have our working groups. And so if you were to click through to the management committee link, we would end up on the management committee homepage. So this is a good page to bookmark. The other link, which is important for all our planning, is the main portal page, which lists all the initiatives of the implementation of the OERu and the active activities within each of these initiatives. And on this page as well, there is a listing of all the working groups. So this is the management committee working group. So if I click through to the management committee homepage, here we have the aims and objectives, the members of the group, the discussion list on groups.oeru.org, and of course the agenda for today's meeting. So it's just a question of getting used to where we keep things. So we can now commence with the agenda. I think the key aims for today's meeting is to confirm the aims and objectives of each of the individual working groups, to review the 2015 KPIs for each of our working groups, and because we're using an evergreen planning model, of course we can refine and recalibrate as new information comes to hand. But the most important output for today, or aim for today, is to confirm our target outputs for our individual working groups for the October partners meeting. In other words, what it is we're going to produce and table for the partners meeting on 7 and 8 October at Northwest University in South Africa. So those are the aims for today's meeting. The best place to start, I guess, is with matters arising from the previous meeting. And again, because we use an open wiki model, we can just go to the minutes of the previous meeting. And typically with each of these meetings, I list the action items that arise out of the meeting, and as we work through the action items, I use a strike through to indicate what has been done and what has been achieved. So in terms of matters arising, the points that we haven't completed yet, the update of the 2015 operational priorities, we haven't been able to do that yet because this meeting is actually confirming those operational priorities. So once we've done that, I'll be able to update that. Number 5, possibly what I should do as well. Do you all have the links there? Let me just in the chat, I'll add the link to the agenda so you can access it directly. Number 5 there, yes, this is in relation to getting a dedicated supporter for CMS support. It was an item that was raised at the last meeting. We discussed a parallel strategy. We'll put a call out for somebody who will be able to help and support folk with the CMS, but also there are a number of partners who want to manage their own pages, and we're planning to develop some materials there, so that's still on the to-do list. As we suggested there, we're going to be working with a representative from Thomas Edison State College to get their courses on the website, which is a surrogate learner, if you will, and that will help us develop and refine the resources for the CMS usage. Number 9, the survey for running the next DS for OER. To be honest, I'm not sure we're going to be able to run another one of these courses before the next partners meeting. There's just too much to get done before the next partners meeting. This is an ongoing activity. As the key management activities of this group are confirmed, we should add them to the action calendar, and we have an item on the agenda there. And the planning and the design for the implementation of our new community site, that's an ongoing activity. So I think we make good progress. The items that are still outstanding are ones we've either not had the information to progress them yet, or they're ongoing activities. So any comments? Any additional matters arising from the previous meeting that we haven't covered? I'll open the floor and I'll take silence to mean assent. Okay. Right, it doesn't seem we have any additional matters arising. So now we're moving into the section of the agenda where we'll take the reports from each of our working groups. And the first one on the list, we had the meeting yesterday of the strategic planning working group. And Jim, if I can hand the floor to you, and let me just open up a copy of the minutes.
Okay, well, we met yesterday, and I'd like to thank Wayne for getting the overview of the minutes and meeting up very quickly. Rather than go through in any detail, I'll just highlight some of the key issues that we got to yesterday. And one of the concerns that emerged for us yesterday is under our KPI to do with product development. And obviously that's a shared KPI with all the institutions, but also a number of other working groups. And it is a bit of a concern that we're not meeting the targets that were listed, and we agreed that there was a need to update the course development schedule. That's where we've got a mixture of nominations and courses that are under development with comments about percentage. Some of them are available now, but we're not absolutely sure that that's up to date. So I think one of the issues that we need to deal with is to get this up to date. And you'll see also that this has an interface with OERu.org on the site, and there were some inconsistencies there about which quarter the course would be available and so on. And I just feel that we need to have a quick update of that. It's not a huge effort, but I think it threatens the credibility of OERu if we don't keep that up to date. So the course development schedule link that's shown there, I think, needs to be updated, and then its consistency with the OERu.org site, where some courses are listed as new and forthcoming. We need to make sure there's a consistency between those two pages. The other thing that we started talking about was the need for a course delivery schedule. So this brings us back in a little way to the action plan that we talked about yesterday, which is also part of our coordinating activity as a strategic planning group. And what I believe is that we agreed that to coordinate the efforts of the working groups, especially those with shared KPIs, we need an action plan, some sort of deadlines, milestones, so that we'll complete things and just use that as a shared action plan rather than having working groups working to independent calendars. If we can get a few key dates that we agree on, like the meetings, which we've already got, then I think we can move forward together a little more fluently than we are at the moment. The other thing that emerged from the discussion was to also create an academic calendar, which is a sort of delivery calendar. So as we reach a point where we've got a critical mass of courses ready, rather than running them individually, as has been happening, we believe there's benefit in moving towards an academic calendar where we might be in a position to market and offer, say, 10 courses or whatever in a coordinated manner. So the product development issue took up a fair bit of our time. The other two issues which I'll mention, which are relevant to this group, is the SIP evaluation, the input evaluation, and I know a number of us have been contributing to refining the survey, and at the moment there's a bit of activity to get to identify a few barriers for a question. We've got a list of benefits to be responded to, and it's quite a comprehensive document, and one that we hope to, get on the run early next month and have an input evaluation report for the meetings later in the year. And similarly, we're aiming towards the meetings of the CEOs with the open business models initiatives that we talked about. And there is a regional meeting being hosted by University of Southern Queensland at the end of August, and Wayne might like to comment on how far we've got with the Canadian equivalent or North American equivalent of that meeting. So just summarizing again, I think there's a need to, it's a personal concern of mine, but also of the group, that we need to somehow consolidate the product development and then work to some common agreed deadlines across working groups to facilitate the achievement of the shared KPIs, so that the action calendar needs to become more instrumental, I think, in the operation of the working groups. Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks very much, Jim. And we do on this agenda have discussion points relating to the SIP evaluation model, as well as the regional meetings for the design and development of the open business models. So I won't take comments now on the SIP evaluation or the regional meetings, but are there any other comments from the floor in relation to Jim's report from the Strategic Planning Committee?
It's Erwin here. I just wanted to confirm that I think it's really important to be getting the courses out there. I know it's something we all know, but whatever we can do to accelerate that process is pretty important. At the last meeting, we talked about having enough of a course portfolio that we could start opening up a track that would lead to, at minimum, let's say, certificate or diploma or something like that. And I'm not sure what the answer is. I mean, obviously, as Jim said, it's a cross OERu concern, but it may be something worthy of special attention or discussions with the individual institutions as to the output and so on. I don't know what's behind all that or what is holding people back, but I just want to emphasize that point.
Yep. Yes, Owen, I would agree with you. I mean, I think it's a shared concern of the network, the rate of our product development, and I mean, I think the solutions are multi-tiered. There are a number of approaches that we can take, some of which are being addressed by the program and curriculum working group, but there are others which can be shared across the network. So we can talk to those perhaps a little later. But I think the key step here is, we need accurate information. And so, I mean, it's a high priority that we get out to all our partners with the request that they go out and, update the development schedule and give an indication of when they expect to deliver, and we get that information updated. If that development schedule in the wiki becomes a source of truth, so to speak, that it is an accurate document and is updated, we can actually automate the process of taking that as a single source of truth for the CMS, so that it would update automatically. So that is possible, and maybe that's the way we need to go with this. But I think that's something that the technical committee can take a look at.
When just a quick follow-up comment, it might be worth, as we chase up the course development schedule, the status of that development, that we create a separate page for course delivery schedule that was more accessible, because there's a lot of information on the nominations and state of development, and it would be nice. And I know we can search that, but it would be really useful, I think, if we just took out of that a list of the courses that are currently available with the potential to be delivered. Unless I've misread that, but I feel that the screen that you've just put up there is quite a challenge in scrolling across, and you don't get an easy snapshot. So my suggestion is we take the course delivery schedule out, and even if it's projected course delivery.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jim, and I think we need to have a separate course delivery or a delivery schedule page, which we can set up and perhaps actually automate from this table through a process of transclusion. The reason I'm suggesting when we capture the information, we just have one page is our average users, don't know how to navigate different pages. It's one of the barriers that Mark had illustrated. And what I just want to demonstrate, we've implemented a feature that when a course is added, there's just a simple form that people fill out the fields, and so we just can have one point where we collect the information, and then we can have an automated process to improve the presentation of that information. That would be my recommendation.
Just coming back on that briefly, I think also that under the course completion heading, if we have available now as a heading instead of 25% of commenced development, if you just scroll up, you'll see that I think some of them have got available now. That would be something where we could extract that and put it onto a separate page that was accessible. In terms of access to the information, I personally tend to use the quick links page, and I find that easy to maneuver around, and just something we probably need to put a bit more time in for communication purposes apart from anything else.
Yes, Jim, that's an excellent suggestion. What I was just showing here is with Progress, we have a pull down form, and it's very easy to add an available now option. So and I think that's a good suggestion which we must get implemented.
That's great.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Yes, if I may. This is Mark. I know that we had been having a couple of conversations with the Saylor Foundation, who have literally hundreds of open courses that are available. I know this might seem like cheating in a way, but they've certainly expressed interest in making their courses available to us. I wonder if it wouldn't be a better way to engage the other partners, who haven't been participating regularly, to rather than ask them to develop courses, to instead edit an existing course, modify it to suit either themselves or the group as a whole. It might be. I think it's always easier for people to react to something that's already there than it is to create themselves from scratch.
Yes, Mark, I think that's an excellent suggestion, and we already have examples in the network where that's happened. The first course developed by Thompson Rivers University, the Art Appreciation and Techniques, was in fact originally a Washington State course library project that was then adopted or adapted by Saylor, which has been improved by Thompson Rivers University. So, I mean, it's definitely a viable model. And in addition to that, what we can also focus on is building wraparound courses based on existing open textbooks. And I think the Thompson Rivers development on the research methods in psychology, I believe it is, has actually implemented that approach. So perhaps, Erwin, you can confirm that, and your experiences of actually sort of reconfiguring a Saylor course.
Yeah, that's true. I won't repeat what you said. Both comments are true. It was a fair bit of work, but when you go back to the Saylor site now, they've actually really cleaned things up a lot. I haven't dug in to see what would be involved in moving content over. There were three major problems that we encountered in the early adoption of the Saylor course. The first one was the content was wrapped up in all different kinds of packages. Some of it was in an LMS, some of it was PDF, some of it was Word documents, and some of it was HTML. So to pull that all together and get that into Wixie text was it was like working your way through the Rosetta Stone. It was a lot of work. I suspect that particularly with sort of the new technical expertise that we have here, like with Dave and so on, it may be a lot easier from that perspective to script that or to work directly with Saylor to find source documents in an appropriately transferable form, maybe XML, maybe Word documents, I don't know. But if we were to formalize that somewhat, I think it would be good to have that more of a technical discussion to see how courses can be moved over without all that sort of stuff. The second issue had to do with copyright. In spite of the fact that a lot of the content was put over, the content was quite localized particularly in terms of American content. We wanted to be much more global, and so we did a lot of adaptation there. And what else was there? Yeah, IP. There were a lot. We had to clear copyright on a lot of stuff and actually redo it so that it would be Creative Commons based. So those were the issues there. For the open textbook based course, yes, that was a lot easier. The challenge that we're going to have is as the course gets updated through the official BC Campus version, how do we make sure that we can easily move those updates over into the wiki? It would be nice to have some kind of a transclusion process or something, but it seems a little down the road to think about that. But I think it's one way. The trouble with the wraparound course is it tends to be very content focused, and I'm not sure it fully embraces the kind of pedagogies that we want to engage in the OERu. So everywhere you run into a paradox, but we just keep moving on.
Yeah. Now those are good points, Erwin, and thanks for that feedback. I also just want to note the comments from David Porter in the chat stream that accreditation is really a key value proposition of the OERu, and some of which we will be able to have a look at from a technical point of view is if somebody identifies an open course somewhere that whether it's Saylor Foundation or somewhere else, we could, as the technical team, actually have a look at automating a conversion of whatever formats are there into open wiki formats and actually automate that process. But I mean, as David points out, the key step is the accreditation piece needs to be agreed to by the partner. So when the partner says, hey, we'll accredit, we'll provide credentialing services for this course. Once we know that, then it's worth our time and effort through the OER Foundation technical team to actually just to automate conversion processes as much as we can. There's obviously always panel beating with a good design process, but that helps speed things up. So yeah. So thanks for that comment, David. I think that's an important piece, and we need to keep that in mind. Okay, so what I'm going to do is moving on with the agenda now. I'm going to hand over to David Bull. Is most probably watching, having difficulty in logging into the system. So what I'll do is I'll report back on behalf of the Curriculum and Program of Study Working Group. I'm a co-convener there. A key issue for us, of course, was again, and I won't go through all the minutes, but that is to focus on speeding up product development that actually leads to some form of credential or output. And the focus which we are proposing and will be following is to actually focus on getting a first year of general studies completed, or a framework for guiding a first year of general education studies. So we'll be working on developing a program document for that purpose. And we've already done some foundational work at the previous meeting. Hypothetically, we identified the main areas that one typically has in a general education studies first year of study. The skills component, the science component, business and information technology, humanities, and other areas. And what this page illustrates are the green rows are where we've got nominations from partners that are actually working on these courses. What we've also got is a list of potential subject areas where there are existing open textbooks available. And so the next step we're working on is to develop a program document, and then to go out to partners and proactively pursue the development of these courses to fill in the gaps. So that's where we're at the moment, and our intention is to present this program document at the partners meeting to pour discussion among the partners, but more importantly to table at the Council of CEOs meeting, so that we can see if we can get executive commitment to filling in a few first year level gaps. I'm going to leave it there for the time being and open the floor to any comments or feedback on the work of the Curriculum and Program of Study Working Group. Right, I'll take silence to mean assent. The next one on the list, I'm going to hand over to the Partner Engagement Group, and I do want to note that Erwin is officially on vacation. But there has been some discussion in the group's site. Erwin, if I can hand over to you.
Okay, and David, jump in any time as well too. So we haven't had a formal meeting. The group has actually come together quite well in signing up into the OERu org, and we're planning to have a formal meeting toward the middle of August when I'm back at work, and also a few developments that we want to occur. The main thing that we're trying to do right now is, well, let me just back up a little bit. I think we had a little bit of an aha moment where when we looked at our KPIs, and a lot of them had to do with growing our numbers in the various communication tools that we have. And rather than focusing too much on that, really realizing that not a lot can happen until two things. First of all, that groups form within the partner institutions to represent the different areas that need to work together within the institution to make their participation in OERu meaningful and productive. And the other one is the need for an induction MOOC, and there have been various efforts in that particular area, but thinking about the framework of local groups within the institution forming around an OERu agenda, that seems like a highly fruitful area for an induction, to work with those particular groups who represent everything from curriculum to credit to copyright or intellectual property, as some call it, the academic oversight of course development, librarians, and so on, something like what we have at TRU. So that's what we want to encourage, and what we'd like to do is to have a checklist and basically a grid developed, a matrix of what typically, in our experience, might be helpful within the host institution in terms of membership and representation to begin the implementation. And then from the perspective of each of those areas, think about what do they need to know, what content, what information they need to be able to access, and what support and mentoring do they need. So we would work that through by means of giving that checklist to work with, giving them some links within that already exist within Wiki Educator that give a lot of good information about the background. There's the partners manual and so on that we could access. But then also to have a live interactive session, something like what we're doing right now, with them of about an hour in duration to work them through it, to answer questions, and then to be available on a mentoring basis, and that would be then the group that that we would funnel the rest of the work of the partner engagement group through. Both Wayne and I have had informal discussions with Lenora May at Portage College in Alberta, I think. I should know this. It's Manitoba.
Yeah,
Alberta. Sorry, that's bad. I know that they found that those discussions were extremely helpful, and so Lenora has offered to use her institution as a pilot. So what we'd like to do is take the KPIs we currently have and put them somewhat on a back burner and focus on getting that pilot done, the mini MOOC process developed, the pilot delivered before the partners meeting, so that we can present that for feedback.
Yeah. And
then hopefully deliver a bunch more running out the end of the year. I have to credit Sarah Lambert greatly because she has kind of just fallen into that same process by virtue of trying to work with institutions to get them thinking about curriculum development, and then finding that they were like babes in the wood. They really, really needed a lot of guidance as to where to start, how to do it, and it's a bit overwhelming. So and maybe over time that can develop into the idea that we talked about at last year's meeting, where we would start to develop a network of mentors. And in my own research, when I did some study into how this process was working within the OERu, and comparing it with what happens within the open source software world, within the more successful projects, there are the tools, there are the communication channels, there is the mentoring. There are the induction processes. All that tends to take place in the larger scale, more successful process. And I think we can learn from that. So while I haven't formalized all this information in the wiki yet, I'll endeavor to do that once I'm back at work, later August, and we'll try to get this plan up and running.
Yeah. I think that would be an extremely productive output for the partner engagement group, and this relates to some of the comments that Mark had made in giving feedback on the barriers and opportunities. And I posted something on the list this morning, which you may or may not have read, is a reference to capability maturity models.
Yeah.
And you all be familiar with this. How we move through typically 5 stages, sort of the initial chaotic phase, and then the repeatable phase where you start documenting some processes that can be repeated. And this is a very open source thing to do, right? Where you actually share the recipe so that others don't have to reinvent the wheel, that they can adapt it and modify it for their own organizations. And so the point I wanted to make is I think this is a very productive step in our journey, that we are now actually transitioning from this initial phase of building this complex organization into the next phase where to start documenting some processes and using a very open source model to do that. That again, people don't have to reinvent the wheels. And I think this MOOC idea for around induction to help people get started is a very good example of that. So yeah, I'm very excited about that development, Owen. Any other comments and thoughts from the floor, drawing on Owen's report? Right, I'll take silence again to mean assent. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to our convener of the Standing Committee for Credit Transfer. And this is the first time that the group had met. It's a reconstituted group that has been formalized out of the work of the Articulation Committee previously. So Mark, if I can hand the floor to you.
Oh yes, thanks. Well, as you know, this is a sort of a newly constituted group, and this was my first time working with the credit and transfer group. But so what we did was basically sort of just try to determine what the nature of our work was going to be. First and foremost, we reviewed the credit transfer and course articulation guidelines. And most of the folks who were able to attend were very supportive of that. That had been developed prior to this group's coming together. So I know Wayne, and I guess was it Ken who had a fair amount of input into that. But that had been developed in large part at the meeting in Hobart. So our focus for the next for the immediate future is to really go over the credit transfer and course articulation guidelines a little more closely, and to identify any concerns or any areas that we might want to amplify or edit. But other than that, we basically looked at not just what these guidelines were, but also the methods by which institutions could acknowledge that these courses were done, whether in another country or in their own. I've mentioned a couple times that in the case of the United States, we have a particular challenge in that we are unable to accept college credits that have been earned at an institution outside of the U.S., and that does include Canada now. So for us, what we'll need to do is develop methods of assessment of a student's completion, and that's also included in those draft guidelines. So that was nice to see that those areas had been covered. So for the next step, we got I guess many of our attendees to join the OER the groups.oer page, and I'm going to be putting together the aims and objectives for our homepage. And I guess then after that, just nagging the rest of the members to get their reviews completed and to forward that on. I see that Wayne is highlighting something there that I should probably thank you very much for doing that. Just thinking about getting to, which is one of the immediate goals really is to develop a structure for implementation of these guidelines once we've completed our review. And then I'm just reading off of what you see in front of you there. Our goal then is to work to accomplish the first KPI, which is 30% adoption by OERu partners by the end of 2015. We did have some discussion as to what adoption in this case means, whether it's simply agreeing to work to adopt these guidelines, or to actually have done so. I think something more modest would be to get 30% of the partners to just simply agree that this is a goal that all of us should be working toward. Wayne, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that at all, or if others in the group here would care to comment.
Mark, I think that's an excellent summary. I mean, I think one of the what was quite refreshing for me is, because this group is a little larger than what it was previously, and we had one or two folk who sort of serve in the registrar type of role, and what was refreshing for me is that there was a good feeling about the guidelines, in the sense that they felt that they would be able to work within the institutions. So that's a good sign, and I think if we can progress, having a couple of registrars around the network saying, well, actually these guidelines can work in my organization, would actually then help other partners move forward. So yeah, that just to add an additional thought to your summary there, Mark. So at this point, if I'd like to open it up to the floor, Mark. Sorry, unless you had something else to say there.
Actually, if you don't mind, just one more point. You did note the registrars, and it is an important it's an important goal really to to get more registrars involved in the group. I know several have signed up. Only one of the attendees at this meeting was in fact a registrar, and I think it'll be important to get their input, whether they're attending meetings or just able to review these documents. So any of us who can forward these to our own registrars for comment, whether or not they're actively involved in OERu, I think it would be very helpful to do that. No, sorry, Wayne, to interrupt.
That's a good point, Mark. Thanks for that. Any other comments from the floor? Oh, Mark, looks like you've done good work.
Thanks.
Just teasing. Right, moving on then. The course approval and quality group. Sarah has given apologies. There are detailed minutes available there. I mean, the main focus of the initial meeting, because there were many new members of the group, was really a bit of induction, so to speak. Asking people, why they're there, what do they want to get out of the OERu, and showing them where key things are, as well as a number of example courses. So the minutes are available there. You can read them. The next item, the technology working group, and I'm going to ask Dave Lane to report back there. Brian, as far as I understand it, you're away in Mexico, or you haven't been around, which is fine. So I thought it would be good to have Dave report back on our previous meeting.
That was my hope. Thank you.
All right, Dave.
Hello all. Dave Lane here. Yes, that was very interesting to take part in my first technology working group meeting, and as you can see, there were 4 of us involved. I was very pleased to be made a co-convener of the group, and especially keen to show my gratitude for the Platinum partners who have actually allowed me to become part of this overall initiative. We discussed one of the first technological changes that I've been involved in, which is to launch the new community.oer.org platform to see whether that, I guess the idea was to make it available because it was relatively easy to make available, and to see whether it struck a nerve with the community and provided a new, more appealing means for communication. I'm not sure how many of you have had a look at it as yet.
Dave, we've got an agenda point later in the meeting as well. We will take a closer look at the discourse platform. Yeah.
Okay. Great. And our discussion involved a fair bit of cautionary discussion on spreading the technology layer too thin, and also on expecting too much flexibility for participants in adopting new technologies. So we were very conscious of that as a thing to avoid. We want to make sure that we're not overwhelming people with opportunities. We don't want to create the paralysis of choice. But yeah, we are keen to make sure that we're not we're keeping time with or keeping pace rather with the rapid change of the technologies available out there, and making sure that our services and systems reflect what the state of the art can deliver. We looked at the key performance indicator allocations for the group. We had a discussion about the perceived issues with OERu partners keeping their records up to date in the OERu content management system, and that appeared to be a bit of a barrier. The familiarity with the technology was a bit of a barrier for that participation. Erwin mentioned previously the idea of an induction MOOC for new participants, and we thought perhaps it would be worth developing some materials that, in regard to administering the CMS, that could be included in that as an introduction, where it was appropriate, or giving people involved in that induction the option of participating in some basic training on using the CMS. And let's see, we we also had a discussion about the overall pricing models, and we veered into non-technology related areas with regard to pricing models for these different services and for the communication degree pathways. So I think that involved the option of providing training as well in some of the CMS tools for the as part of the technology process. We also discussed briefly the fact that we'd received a copyright notice, or notice of copyright infringement rather, in WikiEducator, and how that was responded to and dealt with. And we're pleased to say that the mitigation that I believe Wayne spearheaded was accepted by the company who had leveled the notice, and they have withdrawn that as a result of the action. And finally, we discussed a number of issues with the OERu.org website and noted them down in our Bitbucket issue tracking system so that they can be addressed as the opportunity allows. Among those, the ones that I was most interested in were mechanisms for using the website to increase the recognition of our Platinum partners to add value to their membership. And we also subsequently discussed the possibility of celebrating some of our key participants and collaborators and profiling them and trying to give them some credit for the effort that they've been putting in. Otherwise, we've talked about things like issues like the possibly confusing start date limitations on the website for courses. The fact that some of them had variable starting dates, and that the system required that they have fixed or specific starting dates. So we talked about the idea of changing the data structures of the website to allow for vague start dates that could accommodate that variability. And yeah, there are a few others there that you can have a look at with the link that's in the minutes pointing to the Bitbucket issue tracker. So yeah, if there are any questions about any of that.
Not a question, just a bit of information for folk that will be accessing the recording after the meeting. CMS is an abbreviation for the content management system, the software that we use for producing the OERu website, and partners across the network have password access to actually manage their own pages, and that's what the CMS refers to. So that's just for the non-techies.
That's right. It's probably also worth noting that it's sometimes also referred to in various documents as Silver Stripe, which is the specific brand of content management system. It's an open source content management system that has been used to implement the OERu site.
And I'd just like to acknowledge Erwin's comment in the chat. There are areas for improvement in the CMS. When we developed this, we developed it under a very short time frame for the partners meeting in Kamloops, and so that's what Dave was referring to, the issue list on Bitbucket, where we are listing the issues that that need improvement and attention, and as time allows, we will be making those improvements to the CMS.
I should say to Erwin that it would be certainly great to see if we can. Erwin's mentioned that he perceived the CMS to be quite buggy. It would be great to get a little bit more discussion out of band about what those problems were that you encountered, just so that we can know where to look to improve things.
Erwin, do you perhaps remember what it was? Or was that asking too much for a young man?
Well, it's asking even more for an old guy. Not specific. What I remembered was yeah. I think what happened was when I was putting information in, once I put it in, it was very hard to go ahead and edit stuff. It just seemed, yeah. But the specifics of it, I couldn't tell you, and who knows? Maybe there's been an update since then. But one of us is going to have to go in there one of these days. I just got a note from somebody the other day saying we need to look at our information on there because it is most definitely out of date.
Yeah.
So maybe once one of us, me or whoever ends up doing that, delves into there, if anything comes up, we'll let you know, Dave.
Yeah, that'll be good. And we've also got the project we're wanting to initiate with Thomas Edison State College, Mark, where, because I know you're keen to get some of your courses up and running, so we actually wanted to use that as as a vehicle to help inform the development of resources to support CMS administrators across the network. So we'll be able to have a look, and then again, those materials then can be integrated into the induction course for those people that are actually interested in doing this. So, I mean, the average academic is not going to want to do this, but there will be people in the organization that want to manage their own pages, and if we can just give them a bit of support in how to do that, I think that will be a good thing.
Absolutely.
For what it's worth, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please finish.
I was just going to say that I've begun writing some documentation, some very brief documentation directed at people wanting to achieve relatively the specific aims within CMS, so that we can look at incorporating those materials into an induction process.
Great. Just to follow up on something Wayne said, I think it relates to what you just said as well. As far as adding our courses to the site, that would be great. But two questions just arise as I'm listening to the committee, the technology committee report. One is one of the courses that we've worked on the most is one that we adapted from UNISA's course, which they proposed there. I see that it's listed as being 45% complete in their case, but ours is 100% complete, and there, and it's posted on our site. I don't know what the protocol is for handling that sort of a thing. And the second thing was that you were talking earlier about start dates. The courses we've created don't really have start dates because they're just live and up there. Or did you mean start date meaning availability date? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think it means both, Mark. And one of the issues we've listed is, and that's a shortcoming in the design of the CMS, not all courses have start dates. So in fact, that's one of the issues which we've listed in the bid bucket issue list, which we need to attend to. So and it's good that you've affirmed that the issue we have listed to fix is indeed an issue.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Any other comments, feedback from the floor? If not, then we can move on.
Just one brief comment, Wayne. I think it is important that the public face of OERu.org is kept up to date, and I think there are some dates saying new courses start in 2014, for example. I can't recall, but I had a quick skim through yesterday when I was cleaning up the USQ dates. So I think it is important that somehow we get people to, have things removed that would threaten the credibility of how current the issue is.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, Jim. The difficulty for us at the OER Foundation has been that we actually don't have the autonomy to make changes to information that the institutions have given us. And so this maybe illustrates a process that we need, an agreed process, so to speak, that if something hasn't been updated, that the OER Foundation has the mandate to, do whatever's necessary to keep the site up to date. I mean, of course, there needs to be the necessary approvals, but for example, if an institution hasn't updated the start dates, and it's clearly obvious that the start date has passed and nothing has started, that we just hide that course from display, that we have the authority to do that. And I think that's a process we need to discuss with the partners, and would be actually a good item to discuss at the partners meeting. And I also just want to respond to Mark's query around the protocols with the UNISA course. And the protocols are straightforward. The course materials were openly licensed. You attribute as a derivative work, and that's quite within the spirit of the open movement. So that's all good, Mark.
Great, thanks.
But Jim, did you want to add something there, or? No. Okay. Right, we've dealt with the reports. I'm very happy with the progress. I mean, I think we've identified, you know, the tangible outputs that we can table at the partners meeting that will, you know, take us on the next steps of our journey. Noting that we really need to focus on getting some courses developed. This is just an item I want to raise with the conveners of the working groups, that if you could each just take a, you know, have a think about how best to deal with meetings across multiple time zones. Increasingly, we're getting, you know, larger participation from Europe and Africa, and this meeting time slot is, you know, totally inappropriate for Europe and Africa. And I think it's important that our working groups actually engage remote partners. I mean, everything is recorded in the wiki, and, you know, people can contribute remotely, but I think it is important to actually have synchronous sessions with our partners in Europe and Africa. And I think there are one of two strategies one could use. One is to find co-conveners who are in that time zone, who could perhaps facilitate a meeting in the respective time zone. The other option, of course, is to alternate the times between the, you know, the two major time zones for each of the meetings. So my request is that each of the conveners just have a think about how within your working groups you would like to manage, you know, meetings across multiple time zones. I know it's a bit of extra work, you know, having, you know, 2 sessions for each meeting, but it's a very important facet of partner engagement. So I just want to put that out there, and so that you have that on your list of things to think about. Any thoughts and comments there? Right.
Oh wait, just a quick question. If we alternate, is it possible to? I've never looked at this question, but is it possible to schedule it in such a way that it goes from, let's say, early morning to late evening, but nobody has to sort of get out of bed in the middle of the night? Or is that? Do you think that's feasible? I mean, I don't mind. If you know, I don't mind phoning. You know, having a call, let's say at 9 p.m. or even 10 p.m. or let's say 7 or 8 a.m. But obviously, if it ends up at 3 in the morning, nobody's going to do that. So,
oh yeah.
Do you think that is it feasible?
Look, I mean, I don't think it's sort of a rolling meeting going on is you know, is going to work. And I mean, I think this thing is something that has to be discussed and decided given the makeup of the groups. You know, depending on where you're located, and there's also a skills issue here. You know, if somebody else is going to co-convene, they actually need to know a little bit about the OERu and, you know, those kinds of things. And I think each group is going to have to figure this out for themselves. You know, I'm in a time zone that you know, I can engage, you know, with Europe. It's very late in the night, evening for me, you know, 10 or 11 p.m., which I don't mind doing. But other people, you know, might not be comfortable with scheduling a meeting at, you know, 11 p.m. So I mean, I think the best way is for the individual groups to, you know, figure out a strategy that's going to work for them. You know, and this is one of the unique aspects of the OERu. We spread across, you know, 24 time zones, and so we've got to figure out how we manage that. Hey? I'm not sure I answered your question, but basically what I'm saying is, yeah, figure it out.
No worries.
Thanks, Evan. Right. Moving on. I mean, I think all the conveners have actually had a look at this. Initially, when the initial thinking was that each of the conveners of the working groups would work through the KPIs from the strategic plan and add them to their pages. And then when I started taking a closer look, I realized that there are quite a number of shared KPIs. So what I then did is actually then took the liberty of, you know, putting this document together and extracting all the KPIs out of our strategic plan and allocating them, you know, to the different working groups. And I assume that each of our working groups have actually, you know, had a look at this and to see how we go. And there will, of course, be areas where we want to, you know, refine KPIs. I mean, I think a good example is the KPIs around the strategic planning group. I mean, these objectives of having 25 courses completed by the end of this year and available for delivery, I don't think that's going to happen. And so we need to to think about how we refine the KPIs. Erwin also raised a good point from his working group that the focus will be on developing these resources to support induction, and then the longer term KPIs of actual numbers and that sort of thing will come into play later. So I actually think this process is working well, and it's one of the advantages of having a wiki is that we can have an evergreen plan and really update on a daily basis if we need to. So that's all I had to say about the KPIs. Were there any other comments or feedback from the floor in relation to the KPI allocations for 2015? So what I need to do now is, based on the feedback of each of our groups, and I request that you just make sure when you go back to the minutes of your previous meeting that you have clearly articulated what it is that you want to achieve by the October meeting and then by the end of the year, so that I can then create the page for the 2015 operational priorities. So I'd appreciate it if you could do that for each of the working groups.
Just a related comment, Wayne. I think with the quick links page and so on, some of these new initiatives like the overview of the KPIs, the action calendar and so on, are probably worth considering for inclusion in the update of the quick links page, in terms of functionality. And now I use the quick links page regularly, but it may be that there's some review of what are the key pages that are most used and so on, that we could possibly just consider updating that again to enhance a common focus across the working groups. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good comment, Jim. And I know you have an academic and research background in this area. So I'm wondering if the OER Foundation could actually work with you, Jim, in refining that sort of quick links type of view. And now that we have more capacity on board or on the technical side, I'm sitting thinking that perhaps the quick links view should actually, we could do something a bit better if it was from the main corporate side. Within the CMS, that we have a bit more functionality to do certain things that it exposes the layers and levels as you need them. If that makes sense.
I think it's worth looking at, because the wiki is a massive sort of challenge, as we've talked about, for new members and the like. And anything we can do to get an overview, a sort of gestalt of the key areas and an easy access to those for people who aren't familiar with the wiki, I think that would help. So I think that would be a useful effort.
Yeah, and to be honest, newcomers or folk who are just joining, they actually don't need to get into the wiki until they have a bit more experience, or they're actually engaged with doing something or planning or whatever, and so we can just have a layer that provides information new partners need without having to be exposed to the complexity. I don't know if I'm talking sense, but it's making sense to me.
Yeah, sure. I think if we use elaboration theory as a model, I think that will help. And we've got some experience with that, so I think we should put that on the agenda. Yeah.
Okay, great. And Jim, if you're happy to work with us on that, the tech team will see how we can integrate that within the CMS.
Okay.
Okay. Jim already in his report back has referenced the input evaluation. You will recall that at or those that were around at the time, the first meeting of founding anchor partners, we agreed to adopt the CIP, the context input process and product evaluation model, to guide the implementation and well, the planning and implementation of the OERu. We had completed the context evaluation. We are now at the point of the input evaluation, which is really about getting information in order to inform the design decisions for the implementation of the OERu. And we are working with the Australian Digital Futures Institute at the University of Southern Queensland, who conducted the context evaluation, who are helping us out with the input evaluation. And at the previous partners meeting, a very, very early draft and of concept of ideas was discussed, and then a draft version has been circulated. And again, I must iterate, as part of our open planning process, it is a draft, and it's going through multiple iterations. So we set up that page. We are now actually on version 3 of this document. We've done quite a bit of work. I see Jim Taylor, myself, working with the researcher, Xiang Ren. I know, Mark, you've been giving valuable feedback here as well. We've started culling the questionnaire down, removing, items which are not that relevant at this phase of our journey, and really sharpening up the focus. We accept it is still a lengthy questionnaire. We've managed to bring it down to, I believe, 35 items or 38 items from 45, but this number will still decrease. There are about 4 or 5 items that will be culled, based on discussions. So that's where we're at the moment. I'm hoping within the next day or two to post version 3 up in the wiki. And again, I would ask if you are able to, to give, a last round of feedback, so we, can get this operational. We're hoping to run the survey early August, or at least upload it early August, get submissions in by the end of August, so that ADFI, the Digital Futures Institute, will be able to prepare an initial report for tabling at the partners meeting. And I think we are going to get some valuable feedback on key design questions, and at least that we can take more informed decisions. The other item which has been discussed on our group site is we put out a request for folk to identify, barriers that they're experiencing with participating in the OERu, and we are collating those as they come in. And the idea is that we will incorporate an item in the survey instrument that relates to the barriers, so that we can get good information on how prevalent these barriers are at different organizations, and to help us think about priorities when addressing them. So I thank you for your feedback so far. So by way of update on the input evaluation survey, any comments, thoughts and feedback on the process so far? Right, again, I take silence to mean assent. So moving on then, we are scheduling or planning to schedule a number of regional meetings, which will focus on the design and development of open business models. We're very fortunate to be able to bring out Paul Stacey from Creative Commons, who is in fact working on an international project looking at business models using openly licensed resources around the world, and he's got a good process. And so we have scheduled a regional meeting at the University of Southern Queensland, which will be held on the 27th of August, I believe, in Toowoomba, the main campus at USQ for our New Zealand and Australian partners, and which will then be followed by an open salon the following day, which will be open to anyone, including OERu partners. It's a great opportunity to have further discussions on open. I've also had feedback from BC Campus, one of our partners, that they are willing to host a similar session for our Canadian partners and possibly our North American partners to have a look at business models from the perspective of individual partners. And the thinking is that we will actually table these at the CEO's meeting, and this is related to the thinking in hard business terms about the value proposition of the OERu. And I think it's important that at the executive level, our vice chancellors and presidents actually get to see what the tangible business benefits are of the OERu. So that's where we're at. Erwin, I'm wondering what's the best way to. I mean, do I send you, or the Canadian partners an email say, hey, can you find a date to get together at BC campus? Paul Stacey has already agreed to also run a session at BC campus. So I need your advice on how best to do that. And secondly, Mark, is this something that is sort of within striking distance for someone in New Jersey to be able to attend?
It depends on the timing. I think I could. I mean, it's in a nice place. I think I could make it happen. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Erwin?
I recall some discussion we had with Clint Lalonde. I believe it was Clint, was it? Who expressed interest in helping to support that. I'm trying to remember when that conversation happened.
Yes, that was with the Culinary Arts MOOC.
That was it, yes. I'm wondering if he would be the best person to talk to see if he wants to pull that one together, because he did seem to be willing to take. I think he kind of stepped up to that one, so I'm wondering if he'd be a good person to talk to.
Okay, that's good advice. So what I'll do is I'll send out a sort of generic email to a couple of folk. I'll address it to Clint, and then we see where we end up from there.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for that. Right. This is again just a brief update. As you are aware, we are using a new technology for our group site. The way I explain the groups.oeru.org site to folk who are trying to understand what these different communication technologies are is, each of our organizations typically have an internal email list for different categories of staff. Whether it's the Senate list or the directors list or teaching staff or admin staff. The groups.oeru.org site is the equivalent of that within our organization. Now, obviously, we cannot prescribe an email service for all our partners. We have to have a mechanism of coordinating these groups across multiple institutions. And that's what we use in the groups.oeru.org site for, is really, the communication across our different, organizational structures. And I think it's going reasonably well. From when I last look, almost all the working groups have sent out the invitations. I realize that some haven't replied because of the summer vacations in the Northern Hemisphere. But I just want to encourage our conveners just to chase and resend and nag those invitations that people opt in, because this is the only way we can communicate effectively across the organization in our different working groups. This is scaling beyond a level I can manage on my own. We've got 70 plus seats working on our different working groups, and I would not be able to coordinate personal email communications with 70 people asking when the next meeting is, type of thing. And so the advantage of the technology is that it has a user interface which is quite easy to use, and so individual conveners can actually manage their own groups. So just a bit of feedback. How's it going? Are you finding it easy enough to use? Are there anything we need to do from our side to make your life easier in working with the groups.oeru.org site?
So far, I found it really good to work with. The only thing is, and you had suggested, I didn't notice that we shouldn't be using the batch invitation. I did use the, CSV file, uploaded all the names and email addresses because I had quite a large group, probably 20 or more. I didn't feel like typing them all in, but it was pretty dicey as to whether I had no idea of knowing what it was actually sending out. I couldn't see my email address, my email that I had already composed elsewhere. So, but apart from that, everything seemed to be working very nicely. It's very smooth.
Yeah,
Jim here endorsed that. I think it's a good move and it's easy to use generally. So I'd endorse that move strongly. Thanks.
Yep. No, I think it's going well. And what I'd also like to add is because we have this hosted instance, if any of you need this type of technology for either your internal sort of OERu working committees or a course development group or whatever, it's easy enough to give you admin rights to actually set up your own groups to manage your own OERu processes within your organization. If that's something you wanted to do, just that you know that is available. You could also set them up as what is termed secret groups on the site. So if you want to have closed conversations, that's also possible. So just that you know that we've got a hosted instance of this technology. We can expand it for your OERu activities within your organization, as part of your membership fee contributions. So just that you're aware of that. All right. And then the last item, well, not the last item on the agenda, the next item on the agenda is just a brief reference to the OERu discourse site. This is a piece of software, it's a piece of open source software that is designed for community building. It's touted as the next generation of discussion. It behaves very well on mobile devices, and so we've installed a hosted instance of the site. It has a number of community building features, apart from people being able to earn badges and that sort of thing for the engagement and doing things in the community. The system actually records trust levels, and and as you engage more in the community, your trust count will increase, and at certain levels of trust, you get access to more features of the software. And so, for example, someone with the appropriate trust level would be able to recategorize a question that is allocated to the wrong category, and the technology has these features. And we are planning to launch the community.oeru.org site as the main, first community sort of discussion point for the community. But one of the challenges with a piece of software like this that has trust levels, one of the criteria for earning trust is actually reading posts. And so we have to start populating the site with authentic stuff to read, because you won't be able to earn trust levels if you've got nothing to read. So I'm putting out a request to our conveners of the working groups that, from time to time, if you can think of, specific questions which would be valuable for the community, to create an account on the community site and post relevant items. We've got frequently asked questions sections. We've got different categories, for different things. There's a news area, help if you've got a question you want to, get a bit of help around something, the FAQs, that sort of thing. So I'd appreciate a bit of help from members of the or our conveners, just to help populate the site with a little more authentic content. Any thoughts and questions from the floor?
No, this is great. I somehow missed this altogether. This is terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. This is kind of, it's all done openly, but it's not that high profile. In part because launching this sort of site, it's important that there is content for people to actually engage with. And so before we sort of do a more public launch, we wanted to make sure that there's stuff happening on the site, and so we're slowly introducing it, and then we'll have a proper launch plan. And the other advantage is we took a decision to actually host the software ourselves. This is not a trivial piece of software. There are many moving parts. And there are hosted instances of discourse around. But one of the reasons we wanted to host ourselves, apart from being able to control the information ourselves, is to gain experience on the technical side of the strengths and weaknesses of this technology, because this potentially has huge potential, or potentially has opportunities to be used to support OERu learners. And so, for example, the sailor.org site, their discussion engines are running on discourse. And so, we wanted to get our hands onto the tech and get a good understanding. Dave, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything there, because I know you did the heavy lifting in getting the tech installed.
Well, one of the things that we did when we were doing the installation was to effectively build the recipe that we used to actually implement it, so that we would have some useful documentation that others could use to recreate what we had done if they chose to use it in their own contexts outside of our specific community.oeru.org site. I mean, as I see it at the moment, we're in the blowing on the fire stage. We've stacked the wood, and now we're in the position where we need to blow on the fire to get it started. And then I think it will once we've got enough once we've achieved critical mass, we'll be able to have a nice, vibrant little community discussion there. It's very nice to see some of the really globally, the discourse system has been used very successfully in other communities, so it's great to see that there are some examples of how it's been done well that we can learn from as well.
Yeah, and it was an interesting example here, just purely from my own sort of Twitter feed. There was a bit of authentic discourse going on here around this challenge of I don't know if you remember Flat World Knowledge with the open textbooks. The copyright holder then asked all the when they were sort of going out of business, sort of thing, or changing their business model, a number of folk in the free culture community made copies of these open textbooks because they were openly licensed. But under Creative Commons license, there is this you can actually request removal of attribution, and so the copyright holder actually did that for these free versions of the textbook. So there was a very interesting conversation, which was quite authentic, from people around the world. So, I was pleased to see that. Brian, I know, I'm not sure if you're still online, but I know you've used the technology, or participated in communities where the technology is used. Do you have any thoughts or advice for us, if you're still there?
No, sir. No advice, certainly. It's most of my use has been with communities that other people have been running, so I've certainly never administered it or done anything like what Dave's done. We actually do intend to use it for the project I was in Guadalajara for with a group of 300 people. So I'll certainly be, within a week or so, experiencing something on quite a bit more scale, level of activity with a lot of users with very divergent tech skills. So I may have something useful to report soon.
Oh, that would be great, Brian. Those experiences. Anything you can show us or help us in getting our implementation right would be well received. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and Brian, let me know if there are any technical hurdles that you run into, because we've set things up in a way that's slightly different from the standard way in which the discourse community recommends setting things. Well, we've set it up in a way that they recommend doing it, but it's not the easiest way, shall we say, because we've set it up to be more maintainable in the long term than their most straightforward setup approach. So if you're looking at going down that path, let me know, and we can share whatever wisdom that we've learned from our trials, various trials and errors.
Cool. Well, thankfully, as yet, I'm not expected to install or do the technical support for this thing. But that said, I appreciate the offer, and if we run into any questions, I may well put you in touch. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Brian.
Wayne, do you have any sense of when you think this site might be ready for a more public launch?
There's no technical reason why we can't launch tomorrow. However, I do want to get enough content in there. So I mean, I think the decision will depend on how much authentic content we've got in there that that is a useful site. So that the quicker that folk can contribute and make contributions, the sooner we'll be able to launch. Because then we'll need to go through the the actual planning processes of advising our other community lists slowly that we are migrating to a new site and come take a look, and we need to manage that process very carefully. But ultimately, we want from the OER Foundation's perspective, we don't want to be running any of our community sites on proprietary software. It's a legacy of the past in terms of how those groups came about. But it's not a good look for the OER Foundation to be running our main enterprise communications on closed technology. So, but sort of generic time frame, I'm thinking around 4 to 6 weeks. For a big launch. I mean, I think that is the way we need to go. Dave, do you have any thoughts on this?
I just wanted to mention, just in case it wasn't already obvious or clear to people, that the adoption of online groups as the platform for groups.oer.org is also an open source platform. So in the event that anyone wants to implement it themselves, we just happen to be using the reference implementation of it, which is managed by the company behind the underlying software, the company onlinegroups.net, and their underlying platform group server. It can be used by other institutions as an open source tool, the same way that we've implemented our own discourse. We could similarly implement our own group server if we chose to, and other institutions can as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave.
So it sounds, Wayne, it sounds as though you would have that before the October meetings might be something to aim for.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely planning to have the site launched before the October meetings for sure. So yeah, but again, I would really appreciate your help and just helping to populate some of the discussion, because that's very important for seeding communities successfully. And Erwin, I mean, I think the site potentially could be a nice hub for sort of virtual mentoring support. If we set that up rather well, I think it could help a lot with mentoring.
Definitely worth exploring, and I'll tag along behind Brian to see how things go. I'll let him sort of figure it out first, and then I'll just piggyback on his great successes with it.
Be brave.
Yes.
Get the toes wet.
All right.
I'm just teasing.
Or you could just try to dodge all the flaming tire fires that'll be in my wake in the next few months.
I wasn't thinking that at all, Brian.
Right. Moving on. The last item on the agenda, Jim referred to this in his report, is the action calendar. We finished with July, so we've had the OERuMC meeting. August, the big, from the central management point of view, is the big thing that needs to happen is administering the input evaluation survey. I'm hoping to get those survey results in. Please, any meetings that you have of your working groups, to please add them here on this list. I took the liberty of doing it for the previous meetings, but at the Conveners, as you schedule new meetings, that you can add them to the list. The big things we are aiming for by September is in the second week our next meeting. So by that stage, I'm hoping that each of our working groups will already have completed a draft report of the activities for the year, reporting you know, as far as you can against your outputs you're planning to present at the October meeting. And being in the wiki, of course, you will have the opportunity to refine that right up until the last meeting. But those reports are particularly useful in helping to design the agenda for the partners meeting. And so we need to get that done the second week of September, which will then give us at the OER Foundation, you know, time to work through all the preparations for the meeting. So one of the things, I don't know if you've noticed, we're using a slightly different approach for the meeting site, meetings.oeru.org. So we thought we'd eat a little of our own dog food and actually use our snapshotting model for presenting the wiki pages that are used for the meeting site and running this in a WordPress snapshot. So we're trying this for the first time, and you know, we'll see how it goes. Ladies and gentlemen, I've 4 minutes over our scheduled time. I don't have anything more to add, unless there are any additional comments from the floor.
Nothing from me.
Thanks, Mark. That looks good. A big thank you to everyone for your time today. I know that some folk are officially on vacation, so we really appreciate you sacrificing a bit of your vacation time to, you know, help the OERu move forward. So thanks for that. We'll see you later. I'll get the minutes posted. Due to some nasty deadlines I've got, I won't be able to get these minutes done until during or after the weekend. So just an early heads up that it may be a day or 3 before I get the minutes done. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
We'll see you around. Ciao.